Well, welcome to our online program on addiction and recovery from the Sunshine Coast Health Centre up here in Powell River, BC. And we've been talking about a big research project that we're doing here. It's pretty sophisticated research design, and it's going to take us many more months to analyze everything. But a big part of this is to try to understand addiction and recovery from the point of view of the addict. There's all sorts of stuff written about from what I call the outsider's point of view. This is people peering in, desperately trying to make sense of what an addiction is, through brain chemistry and all that kind of stuff. But this is more coming from the addicts themselves to give us an understanding of their, what we call a subjective experience of the addiction and later on for the recovery. Anyway, one of these themes that we've come up with is, and this is really quite fascinating, is that every single one of our participants so far, when we've proposed to them, you've probably heard about this idea that addiction is a disease over which the addict has no control, is powerless. He gets really wicked cravings and then he can't resist it, even regardless of whether he wants to or not, he just does it. And the response of everyone so far has been, well, I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's actually what's happening to me. I think I'm making a choice. Now, this isn't just a very simple, well, gee, should I do drugs or not? No. I realize, cravings, and I realize pressures, and I realize there's a lot of habit. But bottom line, absolute bottom line, I think that I was the one who made the decision. And this is really quite fascinating. Right? I'm not sure where this is coming from. Maybe the idea that they're powerless because it's a disease, something really outside of their control. Maybe they really dislike that. I don't know. Or maybe it's something to do with they don't really like the idea that they may be like defective, something like that. Which would be true if they had a disease, then they would need fixing, something like that. So we're not exactly sure why it is that they take this stance, but they very often do. In fact, several of them have actually said that they've used the disease argument as an official excuse. So if the family's on their case or something, they'll say, well, I've got this disease. Or they'll even tell themselves, even though they tell us they don't really believe it. But, they will sort of justify and rationalize their drug use by saying, well, it's a disease and really I have no control. Or they'll have a beer or two and say, oh, that's it. Because I have a disease, I have no control. So they use an excuse. But they're very upfront when we're talking to them. And they always tell us, but I really don't believe that. I know absolute bottom line that it's really me. And this makes a lot of sense because we've mentioned before in the online program, probably the most powerful emotion that new clients come into with recovery is guilt. Because they actually know what they've done. Now, they may not be willing to admit that to their mother or to their doctor, but deep down, they always tell us they know. There's not a big mystery there. And then the other great source of guilt, and this is the really crushing one, is that when they look back on their lives and they see, geez, I had so much potential. I had such ability. And what have I accomplished? In other words, they didn't live up to their own standards for themselves. Right? And I think all of these things together may help us to understand that why they would be would say with such conviction that ultimately I am responsible. But it's kind of interesting because it's also what flies in the face of an awful lot of what we read in the newspapers and in magazines, what we hear on television, and what's in fact the National Institute of Drug Abuse, the biggest research outfit in the world, very publicly says addiction is a brain disease over which the person has no control. And this brain disease has many consequences, these psychosocial consequences. But what we're discovering is flying in the face of all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of interesting. And that, particularly this comment, even people right early in recovery, to be able to make the statement that ultimately I believe I was responsible, that I did not have a disease, I was not powerless over drug use. Anyway, just one of those interesting themes that has come up from the research. So we'll be back next time with another example.